We want to talk about credit card debt. We've been talking about the idea of taking the first part of your income after your taxes, after your giving, for those of you who make a regular contribution, and then taking the first 10% for yours to keep. And the idea behind that account is it is an account that you're using for savings, for possibly paying off debt, for investments, just a whole wide range of possibilities on that 10%. And then after you've done all that, after you've taken out for the taxes and the giving and 10% for you, that's when you need to start building your budget. And I want to talk about why we do that, and I want to especially focus on credit card debt today. Credit card debt right now in America is just out of hand. Interest rates on credit card debt, if you carry a balance on your credit card right now, the different sites that I looked at showed that the average interest rate is anywhere between 22.6% to 28.7% annually. That's about 2% a month on your balance that you're paying just in interest. And if you're making minimum payments on that, on your credit card, all you have to do is make a 1% payment on most credit cards. And so think about that for a moment. Your interest is going up 2%. Your loan balance is going up 2% because of the interest, but you're only reducing that with your payments by 1%. And so the math on that's pretty simple, isn't it? Your credit card balance, if you don't charge anything else, is going to go up 1% a month. Now, the average American has a credit card balance of about $6,380 as of May of 2025. Well, let's reduce that a little bit to make the numbers simple for this example, but it's going to show you how dangerous carrying a credit card balance is and why, if you do start this Mind to Keep account where you're paying yourself first out of your check after taxes and giving, why you should probably take at least a portion of that Mind to Keep and start paying down your credit card balance. But let's use a balance for this example of $5,000 on a credit card. And this is a balance that you don't pay off every month. This is a revolving credit type of a balance. And so on that $5,000 a month, if you pay 24% interest per year, which is pretty close to the average, 2% a month, that's going to mean you're going to have interest alone of $100 for that credit card each and every month. And at the outset of that, if you're paying a 1% pay down on that, that's just $50 a month. So the first month, after interest and payment, instead of having a balance of $5,000, you've got a balance of $5,050. And the second month, a little over $5,100, and so on. So after 100 months, that's a little over 8 years, your balance has continued to go up, and your payments, your minimum payments, have continued to go up. And let me show you what that looks like. At the average interest rate of 2% per month and the average payment requirement, minimum payment of 1%, after 100 months, you will have paid $7,500 on that credit card bill, on that $5,000 balance on that credit card bill. If you have not made another charge against that credit card, just leaving it like it is, after 100 months, you will have paid $7,500 on that initial $5,000 balance. How much of that balance is paid off? Well, those of you who have had credit cards probably know this, but for those who don't pay a lot of attention, this is important. Instead of having paid down anything on your credit card, even though you've paid 1.5 times the initial balance over the period of years, instead of paying anything down, you have not paid anything down. But in addition to that, you've actually accrued interest payments that have raised your balance now, after 100 months, from your initial balance of $5,000 to $10,000, if you have not added a single payment to that credit card. How realistic is that? Those of you who have credit cards know very, very well how realistic that is. And so, it behooves us to get our credit cards under control to the point where if we've got a balance on them, that we start attacking that balance. It's probably going to be the highest interest rate item in your budget. If you have a mortgage loan, your interest rate may be around 7%. It might be lower if you got your house a few years before interest rates started to go up. On your car loan, your average car loan is probably going to be about 12% plus annually. If you have student loans, those student loans, depending on when you got them, can range anywhere from 4 or 5% to a lot more than that. But still, all these things are much lower than your credit card interest. So pay your credit card off first if you have a balance. And again, if you're paying yourself first, if you're taking 10% out of every check before you do anything else, you can use a portion of that in addition to the savings and investments, anything else you want to do with that. You can use a portion of that to begin paying down the balance on your credit card. And the way you do that is if you have a $5,000 balance and you've had $100 that month in interest, instead of making a minimum payment of $50, you need to make a minimum payment of more than $100 in order to start reducing that balance. And now let's look at this realistically. The fact of the matter is, if you have a balance on your credit card or credit cards, it's very likely that you don't have room in your budget to be paying yourself first 10% before you get into the rest of your budget. The reason that you have credit card charges is because probably you ran out of money before you ran out of month over the last month or over the last years. And so you've had to start using your credit card to make ends meet. This is one of the reasons why it's so important for us to get our budgets under control and our loans under control. Because until we do that, we are going to literally be enslaved to the lender. The Bible says very clearly that the borrower is a slave to the lender, and anyone who's had a credit card through the years understands that very well, especially those who have kind of had their budgets pinched by trying to get some of these loans paid off or paid down. One of the reasons so many people get caught in a vicious cycle of continually turning in an older car and buying a newer car is because they've got a balance on their older car's loan that they can't pay off. And so they just roll it into the newer car's loan. And that new car loan just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Whenever you don't make a payment on any loan, it's very likely that not only is your interest rate on that loan going to go up, but it's also very likely, especially on credit cards, that the interest rates on those, even if you're keeping them current, will also go up because that's the way the credit industry is run. It's almost a crime in America for our high schools not to be teaching more on basic finance than they do. Most people come out of our public schools absolutely illiterate when it comes to finances, and especially when it comes to loans and interest rates. And because of that, most people, when they're first starting out, get in over their heads very quickly. A $5,000 balance on a credit card may seem like a lot to you, but when you start looking at how something like that happens, it's usually very gradually, isn't it? Maybe you've gone out and gotten a pizza or two on the credit card, and you didn't pay the balance down that month because you really couldn't afford to do that, and you just made a minimum payment. And then maybe you're just starting your household out, and you needed to get some new furniture, and so maybe you bought a new living room set. Maybe you needed a new appliance because the old one just absolutely would not run, and you couldn't get it repaired. And so you bought a new appliance and you put that on the card. And before you know it, your whole budget is shot because you could not make rational decisions on how to approach different situations. If you have a credit card balance that you don't pay off every month, you can no longer afford pizza, and you certainly can't afford to eat out at a nice restaurant anymore. If you have a revolving balance on your credit card, you can't afford to go on a trip and just add that to your credit card balance. You can't afford to be buying new appliances. You're going to have to get into the want ads and start looking at those for a good used appliance that you can pay cash for. Again, one of the reasons that we are looking at our budgets in such a way, and especially talking about this pay yourself first method, is because this is going to help us to be able to get our finances under control. It very likely took you a while to get in the financial mess that so many people seem to get themselves in. Don't be surprised if it also takes a little bit of time to get out of that mess. But I also want to give you a bit of encouragement. The first month that you start getting your finances to the point where you understand them, where you understand how much outgo you have each month as compared to how much income you have each month. And when you first start reducing your bills to where your outgo is actually less than your income, you start having a feeling of control because, quite frankly, maybe for the first time in a long time, you have some control over your budget. This one area, credit cards, is probably the greatest area for most people to get their budgets out of whack. And that's why so many people end up carrying monthly balances on their credit cards instead of paying off the amounts they charge each month. And because of that, the interest rate continues to go up, the balance continues to go up, and you get more and more desperate because your situation is getting more and more dire. Get control of your life. Get control of your budget. Start today. And once you find out where you are, and once you figure out how you can start to reduce your outgo each month, and we're going to talk about that in the next video, how we can reduce what we've already got as far as our current bills. But once you figured out how to do that, then you can start attacking some of the problem areas of your budget, and in particular, any credit card balances that you may have. It's an amazing feeling of freedom when you start putting a little money aside each month just for savings in case something happens or in case you want to go out and buy a pizza. It's amazing how good it feels once you start putting just a little bit of money, maybe $100 a month, into a mutual fund, and you start watching that account grow. Or maybe you start buying an ounce or two of silver every month, and you start seeing that stack starting to grow. You've got something solid that's not likely going to lose all of its value all of a sudden. And it's amazing how good it feels when you start taking a balance that is just overwhelming, and you begin to start chipping away at it each month and watching that balance go down a little bit more each month, and that interest rate going down a little bit more each month, until finally you get to the point where your credit card balance is gone. Then you can decide whether or not you're going to continue to use credit cards. I suspect if you get to the point where you get your balance paid off, you're probably ready to start responsibly handling those credit cards. There's a lot of financial advisors that say, no, just get rid of them all. That's a personal decision that you're going to have to make. But get your life under control, and you can start doing that by getting your budget under control. And one of the best ways to start doing that is to start chipping down at that credit card balance to where you're no longer having to pay a monthly payment on that pizza that you bought 8 years ago. Well, appreciate your listening today. I hope this gives you something to think about. God, thanks for listening. God bless.